What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
Good, man. How's your Sunday?
We're doing all right. I'm outside with a hoodie on because it's like below 70 degrees somehow.
How is that?
I don't know. It's legit like 66, 67 degrees. So if it starts to rain again, I'll start going mobile and I'll bring it all inside.
I love it, dude. I got caught in the rain. I was on my motorcycle Friday night, and I about 3 miles off just saw lightning hit. Sky got black, man. I was riding in the rain. It was not the most fun
Yeah.
motorcycle experience, but
So
it was good.
it's wet. It's a little wet out here, but it's actually really nice. But
Nice.
and I'm sure if I take my hoodie off and my shirt doesn't have sleeves on it, I'm going to get some shit from people. So I'll just leave this on.
I'm going to say it's a fair bet that the shirt does not have sleeves on it.
I have more than 6 shirts where I cut the sleeves off.
I think, yeah, you may not have six that still have sleeves, I think is the better statement.
Well, you know what I've been doing. I mean, obviously, a lot of people know we were supposed to move to Florida, so a lot of stuff is actually like packed up. That's just moved roughly 1 year later. So the wedding will be in April again. So I'm like cutting sleeves off of shirts and like practicing how to make it look good instead of just cutting the sleeve. And if I don't like it or if I don't plan to wear it again, I just throw it away. So it's less to pack.
I got to be honest. I feel like you just found your next course. How to cut the sleeves off of T-shirts to make yourself look more jacked. I'm in. Is there a pre-sale for that? Is there a pre-sale for that? Because I'm in.
I bought a $15 scissor to make sure I got it right. I swear I did. You know, it's because there is a way to do it. So that it's. But I don't like it when it's like there's nothing holding the two ends of the shirt together. Like
Yes.
Kevin Nash always did that. I never really liked that. That's like some kind of vest or something. I don't want a vest.
Yep.
I just want a shirt that make it like a modern day Zubaz. Like anybody could wear it like that, and their arms are gonna look good.
Yeah, your nipples can't be shown in the sleeveless shirt. That's just not.
No, you don't want that.
Yeah,
you don't want that. You don't want that. So anyway, man,
awesome. It's good to talk to you, bro.
Yeah. What's the latest over there in Ohio? What your gym is open? Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the Spot Athletics. Started that 9 years ago. We started 2,000 square feet small private training. So now we have 20,000 square foot private training facilities. We actually did a lawsuit as part of a class action against the governor to get us back open. They opened us basically the same time as we won the lawsuit. So there wasn't much change there. So the gyms are open. However, we're really at, 60% of where we were pre-COVID. Just people are they're fearful and they're just not all coming back. And so, people are just waiting to see what happens. So we're doing that. And then, with RPR, people aren't familiar, reflexive performance reset. We do a lot of in-person clinics and really we've only done one since the shutdown. That was at the Spot Athletics in Columbus. And, I think people's appetite to travel and do stuff right now is just, people are just in that wait and see mode, I feel like.
Yeah, I think there's probably so New Jersey is open for one-on-one, I think. Connecticut is open at large, but there's some restrictions. And honestly, the restrictions in Connecticut seem to make sense. Like they're not as you could say whatever, but it appears that it's a little bit logical and it makes sense. And New York has not opened. I think tomorrow there's supposed to be a report or some kind of instructions for what gyms restricted opening. But it doesn't say when. It just says tomorrow something's coming out.
They're announcing.
Yeah. But I think from the folks that I know in New Jersey and Connecticut, I don't work anymore in New Jersey, even though I'm still licensed there. Up in Connecticut, where we had the seminar several months ago, there's still a lot of members that are just like that in that wait and see category. I don't know what it is that they're waiting to see, but people have their own. That one I don't really get. Like I just want to wait. Well, what is it that you want to see? Like, do you want to? Is it 4 months? Is it 3 months? Is it 2 weeks? But no one ever says that. They just say we're just going to wait and see.
Well, I think the reality is that people are going to wait until their fear level drops to what they feel is okay. Right. So I don't think, and this is what I've seen is I have no problem with risk, right? I think if you own a business, inherently you don't have issues with risk, or at least your tolerance is higher than most. And I think, for me, the fear level is really low. I think I see it, a wide range, but I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to where people feel comfortable. Do they feel safe? And it has nothing to do with numbers. It has nothing to do with anything else. Like, it just literally has to do with probably a combination of what's in the news and what are you consuming, and then like your level of what you're okay with. And I think for anybody, I don't think there's a real answer than just a general, like, if this is the threshold of safety, it's arbitrary, but when they get here, they'll come back. Right. And it's just completely arbitrary for people.
It's an action potential. It's all or none.
yeah, it is. Yeah. Did it cross the barrier? Right? Did it cross the barrier?
Yeah. So, but what we've done for physical therapy, where it's never really been shut down, is just never shake anybody down. No one ever got a phone call. We did consider a group email for current patients just to let them know, but then I shut that down because I felt that the risk of somebody responding in an unsafe way because of how they feel, rather than somebody just letting people know that they're available. And at least I know for me, because I've gotten into some other things, probably the last 2 months, I really enjoy my schedule. Like, I don't have too many 4 a.m. wake up calls to get to the plane or whatever, even though that's about to change. Right. But so I flew this last weekend. That's the second time I've flown, and out of here, you obviously have almost every airline. Delta seems like they're doing a pretty good job in terms of I've never sat next to somebody, and like, look, I got back into LaGuardia yesterday around 6:30 p.m., 6 o'clock p.m. It was like your flight got delayed and you landed at like 2:30 a.m. Like, there's nobody there, so that inherent volume isn't there. So, I didn't have any real reason to get on a plane. And now that I do, all right, well, you evaluate the situation. Obviously, the people I'm going to see are in a particular profession that their risk is very high. So I get tested and we communicate, and quite frankly, in my opinion, based on what I learned of what the NFL is trying to do, I think they got a lot better chance than people give them credit for. Right. There's some things that maybe aren't circulating that is actually, really pushed it in a very, very good direction. So that's. But as far as the therapy, we've been solid. There's been pretty good volume. In New York area, the summer is usually a downturn that doesn't usually affect us. The downturn was, we would never have such an awful, April, May, beginning of June, but then things started to change over.
Well, I think, and this, it kind of comes into, obviously, with RPR, it's that general philosophy we teach about life, right? Is, if you gain all your stability and happiness from yourself, right, then you're going to feel safe and you're going to feel happy. And so I think, everybody handles that differently. Like, you're a person who, you're confident in yourself, you drive your stability from yourself. So to travel and to do these things, you feel comfortable because you drive your feelings from yourself, which is the best place to be because it's the only one you can control. And I think a lot of people drive those from, friends and family, which is hard to control. And then the worst is just the general media and all that. So, I've talked to people who's literally their feelings on it one day, they read a news story and they feel amazing and safe and good. Mm-hmm. And then they read another news story the next day and they're like, oh my God, everyone's going to die. And so I think, like, someone like myself and obviously someone like you, we're generating that stability in our lives and our happiness from ourselves. And so we don't have those ebbs and flows every day. We can just look at things a little more objectively and from a more stable place. Yeah, and, a lot of people that's just not where they're at or how they do things.
Yeah. And that's okay too, because their way is for them. If that's a way,
that's how they work. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned RPR. So for that was a little bit of why we got in touch here to talk about because obviously we've known each other for a very, very long time through some other channels, but I've always been very favorable to the model. I was first exposed to it as you guys promote it and talk about it through Cal several years ago. And obviously Cal Dietz, hands down, one of the best strength and conditioning coaches anywhere. And also at that time in Minnesota, he was really very open, describing that he didn't have a lot of other people around him that he could work with. So when he picked up, he was very, very upfront and open that, hey, this might not be something everybody should be doing. And it certainly wasn't called RPR at that time, because what Cal was doing, it did appear, it was a manual technique.
Yeah. And I think, to that point, that was an RPR, right?
Right.
And that's the thing, is that, Cal introduced to me is Be Activated, which I know you're familiar with. And we talked about, we talked about that when I was out there. What's that? Was that early? I feel like it's a time warp. Was that earlier this year? Yeah, was that earlier this year? Was that like 10 years ago? I don't even know.
I'd have to look into my Google Calendar. I tell you what, the dinosaur barbecue that we went to is no longer an option. It is now closed, which really sucks.
I might start crying on this IG Live right now. That place was amazing.
Yeah. So whatever it was.
But that, and I think that's the thing, right? So when Cal first learned it, it was Be Active. That's how I first learned it. And Cal introduced, told me about it. And that was the thing was Be Activated is 100%. It's a hands-on system. It's for people who, like yourself, should, can be doing hands-on work and all that. And, whatever that might be, massage therapist, doctor, whoever, right? I mean, that varies by state and all that. But I think the big thing is, once I learned it, I came back to the spot and, I did Be Activated with Dave Tate. He set a 90-pound squat PR that day, which was awesome. But I also spent like 2 hours with him. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm like, okay, this is amazing. No one can spend. I'm a strength coach. I can't spend 2 hours with people. And the other thing was, when I talk to my coaches, I'm like, I want to implement this. It can help so many people. Thing is like my strength coaches at my facility, they can't be rubbing and touching. They can't touch our athletes. Like, it's not like Ohio's one of the strictest states when it comes to that stuff. I mean, it's all governed through, like the Ohio Medical Board. I mean, it's really, really strict. Ohio is like one of the strictest on it. And so for us, like in Ohio, it literally, if you're touching someone doing manual work and there's an exchange of money, like you can get charged for prostitution. Because,
how about that?
Because in Ohio, if you don't have a license to do manual work and you're doing manual work without a license, you can actually get charged with prostitution. Yeah. So kind of interesting.
But that's
what we did. Yeah. I mean, that's what we did was,
a week or so. And Cal wasn't demonstrating the, for use. Like, he was showing this is something that's possible. And I do that too. I would, I'll be very clear, and a zebra doesn't change its stripes. When if I'm doing my own seminar, I'll be like, I'll do something that's, very neurologically driven, whatever the commercial brand is. And I'll say, hey, I'm showing you this so that if you work with someone else, this is possible. Wait, where'd you put your hand? Nah, don't even ask, motherfucker. I'm not even going to tell you. And then I play that gimmick up, but Cal, that's where Cal was going. And whether it was last week or the week before, not a terribly unexpected article, particularly if you're involved in high levels of basketball. But one of the Division I women's teams had a big shakedown where there was a number of really crazy things going on there, and lots of people have moved on. And one of the things that was part of that situation was their strength coach was accused of what clearly sounded like these types of methods, where I believe the article said that but he was the one doing, again, this is just an accusation. I don't know the dude from Adam. He doesn't sound like somebody I'd want to know. because unfortunately, it sounds believable, which it doesn't mean it is correct, but it sounds believable. And, they talked about, manual therapy in the form of rubbing in the chest area and the groin and pelvis, which can mean a lot of different things. But I think you guys started to take a little bit of a brunt, and I don't think this is the purpose of getting together is to indemnify or incriminate, because whatever he was doing, that's his business, and he pays the price or doesn't pay the price. Because there was a lot of other things at that university that were really out of line in terms of communication and using fitness as a punishment. Lots of things that just sounded very plausible that are really unfortunate. But because I thought that if we were able to talk a little bit about, and as someone that took the course and someone that actually understands where this is and where this isn't, then it could put things in a more positive light. Because I'll put the words out there right now, because you said this in a seminar that I attended, and it was comped, and I think that's just important for me to say that when I talk about these things, that if you're putting your hands on somebody, that's not the method that you're teaching. And that's crystal clear. And I think you said it during a period of 8 hours multiple times. Now, the reality is, I don't believe for 1 second that that's what's happening out in public. But you can't be responsible. If I tell you don't do this and you go and do it anyway, it can't be my fault. It can't be RPR's fault that people are trying to do stuff that isn't even necessary to do. Like, it doesn't even work. It doesn't even work better if you do it.
Yeah, I think the clear distinction is, right. Like, so, Learn to Be Activated wanted to bring it and implement it in my facility. And I talked to Cal and Chris, and they had started implementing it. And so we basically talked with Douglas, who runs Be Activated. And we're like, we want to create a performance partner side of this where it's completely hands off. It's become self-care where people do everything themselves. And so that's what we created, right, is a system of daily self-care where people can care for their nervous systems. And so it's interesting, honestly, the majority of people who do it, it is 100% all the athletes doing it themselves. Now, do we have massage therapists or PTs who go through and learn, or chiros, and they do hands-on work? Yeah, that's their choice, but that they're licensed to do all that stuff. They can do whatever they want. I think the issue is people who go through, and, in our clinic, obviously you went through it. Not one time do you ever do a wake-up drill to anybody else. We never even show you to do it to anybody else. It's all literally teaching them how to do it themselves. The thing is I think, a massage therapist, a chiro, physical therapist, whatever, they go back, they can use it however they want. The distinction is just knowing what your lane is, right? Like, if I'm a strength coach, my lane isn't doing manual work. It's showing. So like at the spot, we have a chiro and PT right there. And so if someone's having issues and they're not getting things, or they're maybe having a bigger issue, well, awesome. We're going to do our workout and do our stuff, strength and conditioning, and then I'm going to send you over to them to get more work, and they're going to do what there's in their lane. And I think that's where I think the problem is people want to shift lanes instead of staying in their lane and just passing the person off to someone in the other lane.
Yeah. And that's been a big part of my public message for the better part of 10, 12 years, when for some reason people actually listen to what I say. I'm not quite sure why, but really that's what it is. And when you mentioned Ohio as being very strict, I'm not sure people really actually understand how that process works. So I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's super important.
So if you're a strength and conditioning professional, a fitness professional, you're not licensed. You're basically, the government doesn't. You have no rules. Like, you can do whatever you want. And there's this push in some avenues, like to get personal trainers licensed. You're idiots. You do not ever want to be licensed, ever. Like, you do not want this to ever be the case, because then someone else is going to basically tell you what you can and can't do. And in theory, you will be trading those restrictions for credibility in the market by saying you're licensed. I'm not sure. Just be great at what you do, and it won't really matter. Now, here's the thing. Even though you don't have a license, meaning you don't have any rules of what you can and can't do, there are other professions that are licensed, and those professions have a list of rules that not only say what they can do as a chiro, as a physical therapist, in most states as a massage therapist, a doctor, etc. It also says that if you are not one of these licensees, you can't do something. And now where does that bring you? Well, let's say somebody doesn't like that you're really good at what you do and you're making a whole gang of money, and there's a physical therapist down the street that doesn't like that because they suck at what they do, and they're going to make a phone call and they're going to say J.L. Holdsworth is practicing physical therapy without a license. And you're basically guilty until proven innocent. And now what you're going to, is this J.L. Holdsworth? Yes. Do you blah, 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 blah. And they're going to ask you, well, are you licensed as a physical therapist in this state? They're like, no. Well, then you have to, like, you're almost like on trial. And then other people are going to decide if what you are doing is considered physical therapy or not. They're going to say, oh, yeah, that's not physical therapy, go home. Or you could get screwed because these people don't represent you. They represent other things. And I don't think people really understand that, where these things that are gray areas, you can go down hard. Like it's really very unfortunate. And it works for different things too. Like I'm not allowed to do surgery, or in some states, like I think it's in New Jersey, I'm allowed to do a grade 5 mobilization, but I cannot do or I can do a high velocity thrust, but I can't do a manipulation. If I say I'm going to manipulate, because the chiros own manipulation. Now, the reality is that a manipulation looks very, very similar to a high velocity, low amplitude thrust. And it doesn't even have to make sense. These are the rules. And I don't think people really understand, because it's not RPR. There's a lot of courses that people can take where they can become a really bad physical therapist in 2 to 3 days. And they are welcomed in these courses. We want everybody to learn our material. You're just not going to be certified. Well, you think that if somebody's going to take a manual therapy course and pay $1,200, that they're not actually going to try and use the material? And it's just ridiculous to think that these courses that are usually generated from the healthcare side that really have a good understanding on how to support fitness and how to support strength and conditioning. That was my whole gimmick from the very beginning. But it was meant for people to work together. And
it's changing. It's not switching lanes yourself. It's passing the car into the other lane, right? Yeah. And I think, and that's what, one of the things, right, when we first started teaching RPR was we made a huge mistake where, we would show, like, because it was coming from another system, we were modifying everything, right? And so it's like, okay, well, let's teach it like this. Let's do it like this. And the mistake we made in teaching up front was we were showing some things where we would do hands-on and go, okay, now this is like, but when you go back, your athletes do everything themselves, right? And so we were messaging that, but right, like, it's like, do as I say, like, but I'm showing. So then, like, we did that for maybe the first couple of clinics. And then we were just like, no, like, we 100%. So, like, this whole message, right? I mean, even in that USA Today article, like, the girl I thought did a great job, because she said, like, if you're touching someone, you're not doing RPR. And like, I've said that over and over again. And the thing is like, we tell people, like, even honestly, so it's funny, even like our chiro and PT, clients who come in, they'll say, okay, you know how to do RPR, you know how to do everything yourself, right? Awesome. Great. Now I'm going to lay you down. I'm going to do some deactivated work, which is going to be hands-on work with you, right? And so even when they're talking to, like, the people who understand, like, they tell them these are two different things. One is self-care. One is a hands-on system. They're two vastly different things. And I think, what happens is like we talked about, is like, people, and I think, honestly, here's one of the big issues I've seen is that, obviously you're a great physical therapist, and a lot of other great physical therapists. And as you also know, there's also a lot of people in that field that aren't very good, right? And so a big thing that I see is that, like, when I was with Ohio Machine, right, guys would have issues. They'd come off the field and you'd have like 2 ATs, a PT, a doc. They'd be around them for 5 minutes and be like, put ice on it. Like, you're out of the game. And I'd be like, all right, breathe, rub here, rub here, rub here. And the guy'd be able to go back in the game. And so guys, like I could just show them what to do themselves and they're back in the game. They loved it. And the thing that killed me was, like, those docs, PTs, they never asked what I had the guy do, right? They just say, oh, you're out, ice it. And so I think like there's this gap in our field where I think like some guys feel like they have to fill, right? Like, so they may be in a place where like their lane's here and they know the lane's here, but no one's this lane over here, like it's really shitty. It's got a ton of potholes and they're like not real confident about transitioning the lane. My thing at that point is like, you've got to make that known, because like I'm lucky. I've got super great people around me. We got great doctors, great chiros, great PTs. Like I feel super comfortable just be like, send them there, right? But I think if you get in this place where you don't have that network, then I think that's where people start to overreach, and they, instead of like you know what I mean? Like they're like,
I saw it. I've seen it years ago, and because you know, the bottom line is like if you just reach your hand into this imaginary bucket that has the most popular, well-attended, highest revenue generating continuing education, they're really probably more the information tracked back more to healthcare and therapy than for performance.
For sure.
There's just more. And well, I've just never been able to understand that if you want to be a trainer while you're taking these other courses, where some of them are really, really solid information, where there's relevant science being taught, there's relevant applications, and I make no bones about it. I think everybody should know everything. Those people that you're dealing with on the sidelines, for them, now look, in the middle of the game, you know, you're working on somebody, looking over your shoulder, not professional. Hey, yo, big man, hey, come here. Yo, tell me a little bit about that business you were doing with, you know, when you rubbed on them. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that when nobody's around, so they save face, their ego is maintained. You know, I mean that's more about them. Like they just don't care or whatever. I just find it really strange that people that are trainers want to learn those things instead of just working together with somebody. Because the reason they're finding is because they're missing something. People show up to them jacked up. That person probably did try to see a physician or a therapist or a chiro and didn't get it done. Well, they just saw the wrong one. Like that's, you know, and it's, so then they try to do it themselves. And then of course they can protect a couple bucks, you know, where if you, but it's, you know, the danger is that most of those courses, and again, I don't mind saying it, I did not get that message from your course, was that you can do this and exclude all these other people. You know, like there's other seminars where they're going to do nonsense like blow up a balloon. And this one's going to teach you just to hold your thumb in a certain place. All these things that have varying levels of efficacy are, you know, they're teaching you that you don't need anything else. Like you don't, this is, you know, a lot of people, they like saying that they have a system. Well, one of the real definitions, not the definitions that you make up to serve your own narrative, one of the real definitions that someone else decided of a system is a process of decisions and actions that allow you to miss as few things as possible. So if you run this systematic approach, you'll catch as many things that are of importance. So if you're only running a system that gets to this, and this, and you don't even care about all that, well, then it might be systematic. But it's a mini system.
It's myopic.
And then, and then and of course, most of the people that love to take these courses are people that, you know, probably couldn't deadlift their way out of a paper bag. So now they're not comfortable training people and making them really uncomfortable, because the training process is uncomfortable. Like you're going to get out of breath. Sometimes you're not going to feel really good. Whereas in therapy, and when you're really keen with these neurological techniques or very soft manual therapy, the person loves it. Like they don't participate. But the whole reason that they need those methods is probably because they sucked at fitness and they were not resilient enough from a physiological level. So you need these neurological techniques to kind of get them back above water. And then when you profile the individuals, yeah, they're 140 pounds. They got a beard down to here. They don't like breaking in their hat. You know, like this is all nonsense. Like it's so interesting that you can profile the individuals that are into these physical therapy courses, but 85 to 90% of the people going are trainers. You can't get good at it. You can't get good at everything.
So this is one of my favorite sayings, something I talk about all the time, right? Your knowledge can be a mile wide and an inch deep, or it can be an inch wide and a mile deep. And that's where I want to stay, right? I want my knowledge to be an inch wide and a mile deep. I want to be a master, right? I don't want to be a jack. I don't want to be shitty at everything, right? I want to be a master of something. And so for me, I think, no matter what I've done in my life, right? Like when I started powerlifting, I wasn't like, oh, cool, I'm going to lift some weights. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to Westside Barbell and set some fucking world records, right? Like I want to master things. I don't want to be like in the gym taking direction from, a 140-pound deadlifter, right? Like, I want to surround myself with the people who can help me gain mastery. And I think that's one of the things when you look at some of this stuff is, we say this all the time in RPR, like people want to be so, whatever you want to call it, cultish or myopic, however you want to deem it. Like the thing is, when people ask me, I'm like, every system has its place. Every tool has its purpose. Like what I find is RPR makes pretty much every other thing just work a little more efficiently.
Yeah.
But people are like, compare this or compare that or this. And I always say like, no, like I love every system. And because the thing is like people are out there, they're getting results. That's awesome. Like can adding this before like an order of operations, can this make it more efficient? Like, and I don't know why people have to like another one of my favorite sayings, right, is blowing out someone else's candle doesn't make yours burn brighter. Right. And so like when I see people like downplaying other things or it's just like, why? Right. Like at the end of the day, that stuff will all prove out. Right.
And
it will.
And I definitely learned that. I feel like I definitely made those mistakes early in my speaking career where it was like, dude, listen to me.
right.
And I would speak very negatively. Now I still have strong opinions, but if somebody says they got a result, you can't argue. Now
right.
I would prefer that result be judged by some alternative party. Right. So for instance, I feel like I should be able to send somebody and be like, hey, Holdsworth, I'm dropping Allie off here. I'm going to pick her up in 2 weeks. I need 30 degrees of hip extension on the left. If I measure it, I'll let you're going to ask, how do I measure it? I'm like, don't worry about how I measure it. Because we shouldn't argue.
No.
Now on how to measure hip extension. We could argue about the methods that we use, but we shouldn't be. And now the scientific process on how you get there, I think can be very dangerous if it's not real. Like if it's made make believe, or what I have found in a lot of these other types of really powerful, effective neurological methods is that things are facts, but they're not relevant. Like for instance, I have Beats on and you've got headphones. It's irrelevant. Like we're both communicating. So when different models, and it's called like the bookend effect. It is very much, if you study influence, cult or whatever, where if you start the message with something that's a fact, and then you finish the message with something really desirable, you can tell them anything in between, and it's very, very dangerous. And that's where I think it's very useful that, and that's exactly what I would say, echo what you say. Like, people want to ask me about RPR. It is very useful. Now, whether I'm doing it or be activated, let's call them cousins, because clearly, if you're,
for sure,
like we can say that if we keep peeling back the onion, the areas of the body that we're intervening at, we're trying to accomplish the same thing. Right. We could argue, at some point you might need somebody's hands, but if you don't need somebody's hands, then you give it the smallest dose necessary. But you're just setting yourself up for something else. Whereas, these dangerous individuals, they give you the flying 7, crack, crack, crack. You feel great. And then you're back in their office, again, or they're like telling you right then and there, I need to see you 40 times. How the fuck? What if you get better in 38 times? Like, I mean,
right. So you won't get better till the 40th. The 40th is the magical visit, bro.
So I think that's another thing that I'd like people to know, because if it's coming from someone else, whether they care about what I say or not is whatever, but I'm not, I'm a user and I wanted to learn it. And we know that there was a bunch of times that I couldn't make it because of my calendar. And this is just something you'll do in a sequence. And it doesn't change. And you're going to evaluate in this highly objective way. Then you're going to do what you do. And then you're going to do these other things that will improve more non-neurological. Now, of course,
mechanical. We call them just mechanical, right? Like,
but you might not be able to achieve cardiovascular fitness as efficiently, or you may not be able to improve the direction of collagenous tubules as efficiently without removing some of these neurological roadblocks, whether it's from breathing, whether it's from some of these lymphatic points. There's no secrets to this. It's when you just do it and be like, oh man, you're awesome, man. Yeah, cool, huh? Can't be. No, that's a problem.
Dude, I tell people all the time, RPR doesn't fix anything, right? It just optimizes your neurological firing pattern. So like, look, if you're an optimized piece of shit, you're still a piece of shit, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're the best piece of shit that you can be, right? Like, and that's the thing, right? Like, if someone like, you know, like for Dave, right? So it's like, okay, he went from 610 to 700 in a squat. That's awesome. If someone walks in with a 100-pound squat, they're not getting to 700. Maybe they get to 130, right? Like, like, you know, like people have this misconception, right? Like people are like, oh, this fixes. No. Like it optimizes what you have. Like you have to have all those things, right? Like, I mean, you and I both, like we've been training for a million years, right? Like you don't gain that kind of strength from some magical whatever. If we knew that secret, bro, we'd be on our own private islands, right? Like, I mean, you know what I mean?
I would say Dave always had that. Like he walked into the room with you and he did have the physiological ability.
Right. He had the capacity. For sure. But
there was something in the way, and there's probably a list of things that were probably cultivated to help people change their pain. That was why they were maybe invented or first practiced and distilled. But then people that were also understood the second part of the process, they're like, hey, let me try this. Because just like you can do a breathing technique and all of a sudden you gain 30 degrees of range of motion, it was always there. You can't change.
It was there.
You can't. These things don't happen. And look, and again, I think there's seminars that are in line with that. Now, the reality is that if I use my hands to gain that, to access that science,
you got to be licensed.
And here's the other thing. A lot of times when these neurological roadblocks are in the way to performance, I have no issue with someone identifying it or suggesting it. Like you're allowed to know things. If you do something to remove those roadblocks, what are you going to do when it doesn't work? Because I mean, I don't know. We were never talking about pain in your RPR course, but a lot of other courses are talking about it. And if you want to do some kind of fascial, decoaptation exercises, which this is an enormous part of my practice. But if you're going to do it just because someone hip hurts and you're going to try to gap their hip from this really good osteopathic technique, you need to realize that sometimes your hip hurts more when you're done. What you're going to do now, what are you going to, even if you didn't touch the person and it's just an exercise, oh, let's try breathing. Well, at what point do you realize that breathing might actually make them worse? And to have no recognition of this is something that I wish people would be aware of, because if it's powerful to go one way, it can go the other way, and we don't like to talk about
the Spider-Man rule, right? It's the Spider-Man rule. Great power comes great responsibility, and that's I think I think that's one of the things. It's like I have kids, right? I have 3 kids, and so my first kid, I was like, what the heck? Because the obstetrician doesn't do jack, right? The nurses do the whole thing, and basically they come in at the end and hand you the baby like they did something, right? So they collect their fee. And so I'm like, this is so stupid. But then I realized, like, that person is there in case something goes wrong. Because if something does go right, if everything goes right, the baby slides out and everything's great, and you smack it and it cries and all life's good and everyone's happy, I can do that, right? I can operate a pair of scissors and cut some umbilical cord. The thing is if something goes wrong, I want the highest educated, most well-skilled person down there navigating what's going wrong. And that's the piece of it, right? I think that's why the licensing and everything is so important. It's not important for the easy issues that are easily solved and there's no complications. It's when, just like what you said, when something goes wrong, that's when there's a problem, right? Nothing's wrong until something's wrong, right? Like that's, you know what I mean? And that's the thing.
that's when that phone call gets made, and we don't hear about it, but that's when the person calls or writes a letter saying that so and so did this. I know a lot of gyms that they don't allow you to use the stick to do soft tissue work. They won't let you use the gun to do soft tissue work, but you're allowed to show the client how to do it. And I'm not even sure that's even right or not, like, because what are you doing it for? Is it because they don't have enough knee flexion and their knee feels fine? Yes, that would be my standard. But if it's because somebody's knee hurt, yeah, it's very reasonable that somewhere the solution can be had with improving knee flexion. But you don't know that. What if they have a bucket handle meniscal tear, and now you've increased their knee flexion temporarily, and now their knee blows up? Yeah. You did that. So that's really important. Here, let me tell you a story, and maybe we'll finish up with that. I won't say his name. I'm not sure if he matters anymore. But he had some run a little bit when he was working for somebody else in New Jersey. And he posted that he was working with some professional athletes. He wrote an article, and he was using Graston. And I think he said Graston, so I'll say that. But of course, you could use any of these tools. None of them are different than others to a degree. To a degree, the only one that really is different is probably Mark Scappaticci's fascial abrasion tool, which is a little bit different. Fat tool. He once paid for. We're at dinner up in Toronto, and he paid for the bill with, and on his credit card it says Fat Tool. And I'm like, when the dude's coming over to say something about the bill, like the card got declined or something. Anyway. And he went on to say like how positive his results were from using Graston. Now, look, I can show a 4-year-old how to use Graston. It looks very similar to coloring. And if you believe that making it red, creating the petechiae is your answer, which may or may not be part of a solution, it ain't hard to do. Okay. If it feels softish, do it. If it feels hard, don't do it. Anyway. He was very happy with his results because these types of techniques can yield good results. And he was getting smashed online that how dare you do this? That's manual therapy. You're not a physical therapist, blah, 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 blah. And I called him and, I offered him some time, which, hopefully was in a non-threatening way. It was probably around a time where I started to feel comfortable to reach out and help people because this dude wasn't my friend and I don't want him using Graston. Here's what I said to him. I said, hey, you know what? The reality is that no one can touch you because you don't have a license. Somebody's going to have to say that you were committing physical therapy without a license, and nobody's going to really do that. It doesn't happen nearly that much. Other things it happens, but I said, you're going to be fine. Don't put that shit on the internet. But here's the question. Where would you want your grandmother to go? Huh? If your grandmother needed Graston, would you want her to go to a trainer who was really good at having guys do box squats and box jumps? Or would you want it to go to the chiro or physical therapist down the street that has been using Graston for 10 years, 10 hours a day? Where would you rather go?
Right.
Well, interesting. Because what I don't understand is if the answer to most of those questions is always going to be that you want your grandmother to work with someone other than you, even if you divide your work 50-50, like what I do, like I'm not the one, like people think of me as a strength coach and a physical therapist, but if I don't practice only one, there's opportunities to get better by making mistakes that I'm not taking. Right. Now, I've been around a little bit. I might break my own rules, but I'm also admitting that I am not as good of a coach as I would be. And I am not as good of a therapist that I would be because I get my hands in both. So if you only do something for 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes that you're getting worse at something else.
Yeah, you're losing.
You want to say 50-50. Like you can't possibly take these opportunities and get better at both things when there's somebody else who's better at it. He's like, wow, I never thought of it. Of course not, because I'm the one that always thinks of things that no one else thinks of for some reason. This curse. I said, like, would you want your grandmother to get Graston by you? Or would you want your grandmother to get Graston by somebody else down the street, who, by the way, after you send them one person, they'll probably send you back 3. And now you have this very powerful relationship. So there's a lot of things here, like putting your hands on people. Now we're talking about Graston. Any doofus can do Graston. I could teach anybody to crack a neck, in a very short period of time. But when you put your hands on somebody, you got to realize, and if you're putting your hands on somebody because they have pain, man, I think it's important that people know that that's not what Cal Dietz showed several years ago. That's not what you showed in your seminar. And if anybody has a negative opinion based on what happened at that basketball program, I think that's also a mistake. And I think it's because this stuff's useful. And it's useful in the way you described it, JL. It's useful. You do this, then you do this, and then you do this. You're not rubbing on somebody and sending them out the door when they feel better.
I think one thing to finish up, but I think it's a kind of a personal type story with it is, so my son, he'll be a freshman this year. So last year he was in 8th grade. Now, obviously, as a co-founder of RPR, right, I'm like, you got to do this before every sporting thing, right? But my son doesn't, he's kids. He don't want to listen to me. Well, so it's funny. His head wrestling coach went through the RPR course online, implemented it with the wrestling team. And then my son comes back to me. He's like, oh yeah, this RPR stuff's great. Right. And so what's funny is they have 85 kids in their middle school wrestling program. The coach has been there 10 years and they went through it. And it was the first year that they went through the entire season and none of the kids got a concussion. And so it was like awesome because like the captains of the wrestling team, like middle school kids, like everyone before they go out on the mats, he's taking them through the wake up drills and the breathing. And like, I got videos, like, I'm like, man, this is what it is, right? It's like, it's empowering the kids. Like at the end of the season, like the wrestling coach would just yell in there like, all right, captains, get them going, RPR. And he'd be doing all his stuff. And the kids took total control of it. Like that's the best, right? Like those kids are empowered to do the things to take care of their body. And, again, it's not meant like if one of those kids has an injury like that, it's not meant to like solve every problem. It's like you said, we do this here and then we do all this other stuff. Right. And it just helps like remove a roadblock or change a pattern to help a kid, move better, be healthy or whatever. And I think that's something that people like need to just, it's understanding that distinction. Right. And I think you're right. Like when Cal first learned this, when I first learned this, right, it was be activated and we were showing people and it was hands-on, but it's a big distinction between what RPR is today and what be activated is. It's two. Here's the way I say it. RPR is like brushing your teeth. It's daily self-care. Be activated is going to the dentist. You go there because you want to make sure you're doing everything right and have them do things you can't do yourself. And that's how I always explain it to people.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a good utility. And it's worthy of conversation as an opportunity to illustrate all these other things that are really quite like this. My contributions here are really independent. We could substitute RPR for a lot of other things.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the stuff that I thought that if we were able to put something like this together, people would hear these things. And they're not new from me, but it's within a context because. There was a lot of craziness that was going on in at that program in Texas. So that's and I certainly hope that whoever there that has moved on that they find a good footing because if they did make some mistakes, just like I have, I hope that they're able to figure this out. This isn't a witch hunt on these people. Even though there's a lot of things that don't sound very agreeable, I hope they are able to figure it out, take care of their family.
I really think, honestly, like we've all made mistakes. And I really do think if you're in this profession, you're in this profession because you care about helping people. And so sometimes, right, you're going to do that in the best way you know how. And sometimes like the best way you know how isn't going to like, it's not going to yield good results or it's not going to be very good. The thing is like, do you learn from that and do you change and adapt and grow? And that's one thing, like, I feel like I've been fortunate enough to be around people who've helped me see that where it's like, my philosophy today is completely different than 5 years ago. Right. And, there's some main pillars, right, that don't move, but I think, a lot of people are just stuck, right? They just keep repeating the same mistakes. And that's when there's an issue, right? Mistakes aren't bad. They're lessons, right? It's just as long as you learn and grow from them.
What's the line? You get me once, shame on me. You get me, or whatever it is. I'll say it wrong. Yeah. All right. Hey, it doesn't look like there's a lot of questions through here. But my online client, I had a couple this afternoon and they asked, how come you weren't in the video in the West Side? I said you were, and in fact, I remember watching it, and I texted you because you got a little run for about 6 seconds when you put your name up on the board. But if you go get 6 seconds doing something, get your name up on the board at West Side is the real deal. So you definitely were in West Side versus the World, which was really fun to watch. So
yeah, I
cool
mean,
stuff.
Obviously getting to write my name up on the record board at West Side, like that's just it's one of those days. It's cool, and it was nice that in that documentary they put that footage in, just because it was an awesome day, right? I mean, that's something I'll always be proud of is having the biggest bench at West Side Barbell, and obviously doing those things. Like those are things I'll always be proud of, and it's I think if people, it's funny. I think people who watch that documentary a lot of times are like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." I'm like, "Man, you don't." I mean, we've talked about this. Like, that's the PG version of what was going on. So
all right, man. Well, hopefully this was useful for everybody.
It was awesome, man. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you having me.
We'll get it up on YouTube, and all good, man. I hope everything goes well next couple of weeks here.
Awesome, brother. Hey, tell Allie I said hi. Have a great night, man.
All right, man.
We'll see you, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye.